All told, police would find the remains of at least 6 people on that property.
6?
They also found evidence that Luis was not just using their body parts to make art, he was also cannibalizing his victims.
Nigga, are we serious, gang? Like, everybody want to be Jeffrey Dahmer, huh? Like, everybody want to be Jeffrey Dahmer. What the fuck you mean he was cannibalizing them? What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got real images with frightening backstories. Let's check this out.
Today, I'm going to tell you 3 stories, and at the end of each of them, I'm going to show you the haunting photo or photos that are famously associated with them.
I bet.
But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So,
Let's get
George,
past
let's get
this,
in.
you know what I'm saying? Get straight to the vid. Locked in.
At 10 p.m. on January 31st, 2012, a 23-year-old man named Chen Rongyu walked into an internet cafe in New Taipei City, Taiwan. The cafe had a front counter where a cashier would check you in and sell you snacks and drinks. And then from where he was looking, behind the cashier were all these tables, these long rows of tables with different computer stations at them. And there was at least about 30 people already sitting behind each of these terminals, fully engrossed in whatever game or whatever they were doing on the internet. And not one of these people even looked up when Chen walked inside. I mean, nobody was interested in Chen. But for Chen, that was sort of part of the allure of this cafe. He got to, sit down and play his game and be totally left alone. And so Chen walked up to the counter and paid for some time. He also bought a soda, and then he walked around back. He found an empty computer, sat down, and immediately fired up his favorite game, League of Legends. League of Legends is a multiplayer online battle arena game that's extremely popular all over the world. And Chen took this game very seriously. He routinely would spend 8-hour-long marathon sessions at this internet cafe just playing League of Legends to try to level up and move up in the ranking system. And so today, that's what Chen was going to do. And so after the game was booted up, he immediately locked in and he was in his first battle. And then before long, hours had gone by and he hadn't even gotten up. And then eventually, a couple times he got up to get a soda refill and to get a snack. But I mean, he basically just all night gamed, just nonstop, periodically stopping to literally put his head down on the table and take a 15-minute power nap, only to get right back up and get back into the game. And so all night, he's just on this game. By a little after noon on February 1st, Chen had been gaming nearly nonstop.
I ain't gonna lie, bro. Gaming been hella ass lately, bro. Like 2K, that shit been ass since 2K18. Madden, I play it occasionally, bro, but that shit ass too. There's just really no good games, bro. And like with Rockstar continue to push back GTA 6, we ain't gonna have no good games to play.
Hours, which was long.
Bro, Uncharted need to come out with another story game.
Stop now. He was exhausted,
real shit,
but he was doing great. This is like one of the best sessions he had ever had. And right at that moment, he was in the middle of this really intense match where his team was about to get knocked out by this really good opponent. And if Chen could just lock in, they could pull out a win. Okay. And so Chen was super focused, leaned forward, hands flying across his keyboard and mouse, and he managed to dodge an attack. And then he geared up for the big strike. And right as he did, something went wrong. About 9 hours later, around 9 p.m., the cashier at this internet cafe had just finished giving another soda to one of the customers, and then they looked out and she noticed there was nobody else in line. Now, the job of this cashier was not just to check people in and give them snacks and drinks. It was also to keep the cafe clean and also, critically, to periodically make rounds and kick people out once their time had expired. Because oftentimes, a lot of these gamers would get sucked into their games, lose track of time, and basically end up playing for longer than they'd actually paid for. So the cashier grabbed her clipboard with all the information about each of the customers and how long they had paid for, and then she began making her rounds in the back. And part of it was she needed to speak basically to all the people that were there and kind of confirm that they were supposed to be here still. But as she walked into the back, per usual, nobody looked up at her. I mean, all these people at all their terminals were heads down, fully focused on their game. I mean, completely immersed. And so she began going, one person to the next, being like, hey, Are you good? Did you pay for your time? Are you going to be here any bit longer? And a lot of these guys, they'd finally look up and be totally shocked she's even standing next to them because they weren't paying attention.
There's no way you're
But,
that locked
one
in.
by one, she checked each of the monitors, and eventually she got to Chen. And when she got to Chen,
bro, I feel
Chen
like somebody
was
could just easily come in there and just rob them niggas, like easily, bro.
on this game entirely.
Like there's no way they had
to the
zero
point where when
awareness.
she said, "Hey, your time is up. You've been here for 24 hours. You paid for 8 or 9 or whatever
God
it was."
damn.
Chen didn't even look up at her. I mean, nothing she could do could get Chen.
Oh, yeah,
to
bro
even
need to go
acknowledge
outside
her.
and
He
touch
was so
grass,
focused
I ain't
on
gonna
the
lie.
game. And so eventually the cashier, out of frustration, was like, "Hey," and she kind of tapped his shoulder, and Chen leaned back. And when he did, and the cashier got a good look at him, she screamed. It would turn out, until this very moment, Chen had gotten his wish. He had come to this cafe 24 hours earlier and been totally left alone. He got to exclusively just play his game in his own world. In fact, the whole time he was here, no one had even looked at him. Because if they had, they would have seen something was horribly wrong.
What happened?
It was the cashier who walked over to him
Please don't
and
tell me this
tapped on
nigga
his
dead.
shoulder who noticed what was wrong. Here's what the cashier saw. This is a picture of Chen, and Chen is in full rigor mortis. Because 9 hours earlier, when he was in the middle of that really intense fight with that opponent who was about to beat Chen and his team, Chen, he got really excited and he was about to land that big strike that potentially could have been the blow that would have won the match. Well, he was so amped up that Chen had a heart attack and died.
Wow.
And for the 9 hours after he died, when he was still in the same position he was in playing the
R.I.P.
game,
to Chen.
nobody noticed. He just sat there appearing
What
to be
the
fully
fuck?
alive, walked into the game like everybody
How,
else.
bro, how didn't nobody
but he was
notice
actually
that
dead.
though?
And so it wasn't until the cashier tapped Chen on the shoulder and he rocked backwards, still in his gaming position, but because he's in rigor mortis, his hands kind of jutted out in front of him up into the air, that she realized he was actually dead.
Wow,
Chen's family
that's
would
gotta
later
be
say that he
traumatizing.
had pre-existing heart issues that very likely contributed to his fatal heart attack.
Damn, bro. What would y'all do in that situation?
Thank you to BetterHelp for
Okay, bro.
sponsoring.
Shout out BetterHelp.
School.
He ain't sponsor me though.
King like Pete, we
I'm
done
gonna skip
member.
past
All as a
that.
couple,
You
you
know
find
what I'm
BetterHelp
saying? God damn, long ass ad. Alright, the perfect shot. Somebody finna get their head taken off.
On the afternoon of October 11th, 2023, a 48-year-old man named Samuel Gomez stood in the lobby of the Moxie Hotel in Portland, Oregon, talking to the concierge. Samuel had flown in from Phoenix earlier that morning because he was speaking at a conference in Portland later that week. But for now, he was just gonna go out and enjoy the sights, and so he had asked the concierge to give him some local recommendations. The concierge named a few cool local places. Samuel thanked him, and then he headed out the front door onto the road. And as soon as Samuel was outside, he immediately heard this loud commotion happening right down the street. And he turned and looked in the direction, and he saw this kind of gaggle of people and cars sort of standing in what looked like a big circle around whatever was happening over there. Samuel couldn't tell what it was, but people were honking and people had their phones out filming sort of whatever was in the middle of the circle. And from the looks of it, it appeared there was at least one police officer in his car sort of beginning to marshal the scene and block traffic. But, there was just this chaotic scene happening, and Samuel really had no idea what it was. But naturally, being a human, he was interested. He wanted to see what was going on. And so Samuel began walking down the road, and as he did, he pulled out his phone, opened up his camera, and began filming and taking pictures. And as he got closer to whatever was going on here, the cacophony of horns and people yelling and all the chaos just got louder and louder, and it still wasn't clear at all to Samuel what the heck this even was. And so he just continued to take photos and just kind of be an onlooker. And at some point, when Samuel got right up close and actually was standing right near that police officer blocking traffic, he happened to turn his phone and aim his camera at the police officer. And when he did, he took a photo. Here is the photo he took. As you can see, the police officer is aiming his gun directly at Samuel.
What the fuck?
Because this is not a police officer. Samuel just thought he was a police officer. When he looked down the road at this crazy scene, he saw this guy in a car who sort of appeared to be, maybe an undercover cop, sort of, in the right place at the right time, taking charge and handling whatever this was. when in reality, this man
That's
who's
why
in
you
this
mind
photo
your own
is a guy
business,
named
bro.
Jeffrey Hammond, who had just been involved in a road rage incident, and he shot and killed a 47-year-old man named Ryan Martin. That was the
RIP to him,
scene
bro.
that Samuel
What the
had walked out to.
fuck?
Jeffrey Hammond shooting and killing Ryan Martin. That's what everybody was reacting to. And so as Samuel walked down the road not knowing that, he inadvertently stood right in front of the shooter, who was still sort of crazed, aimed his camera at him right as Jeffrey Hammond swung his gun around and shot Samuel. So like literally seconds after this photo was taken, Samuel got shot.
Nah,
Luckily,
that's
though,
crazy.
Samuel would survive the shooting.
Good.
As for Jeffrey Hammond, he was arrested and charged
Give him
with
life.
murder, and as far as we know,
Life,
he's currently in jail awaiting trial.
Bro, get that nigga life, bro. Real shit. Nah, that is insane. That's exactly why you mind your own business nowadays, bro. You know what I'm saying? Stay to yourself. Don't be getting involved
On
in all
April
this other
5th,
bullshit.
2018, a young man named Luis Hernandez sat inside of a small stone shack with a metal roof on a rural property in northern Venezuela. Luis was a painter, and for the last year or so, this shack had doubled as both his home and his art studio. And it was basically always a mess. There was dirty dishes and food everywhere, and all his paint supplies were scattered all over
Excuse
the
me.
ground. But the walls were all adorned with all of his beautiful and most prized possessions, his artwork. He mainly painted really dramatic-looking portraits in very bold colors. In fact, when he was actually doing his painting, when he was in the middle of the floor, right in the center of his shack, on one wall, there was this face of a man he had done, all in red. And then on the left, on the other wall, was this
crack
woman's
addict?
face,
Why
all in
his lips
blue,
white?
but with bright red lips. And these paintings were both so intense that at times, as he was doing his work, it sort of felt like they were both looking at him. But on this particular day, as Luis sat in the middle of his shack working on his latest project, he put that weird thought out of his mind that, his paintings were watching him, and just focused instead on getting this done. He had one more beautiful portrait he was working on, and he took his paintbrush and he dipped it in the black ink, and he put the finishing touches on it. And when this portrait was done, Luis kind of sat back and took it all in, and he couldn't help but feel a bit emotional, because this project, it was different than any other he had ever done. He wasn't doing it for fun. He wasn't doing it for pay. He was doing it as a way to cope with a big crisis in his life. So this shack where Luis worked and lived, and also the rural property that it sat on, belonged to Luis's boyfriend, Lisandro Rosales Garcia. Lisandro and Luis had met about a year earlier, when Luis was really down on his luck and was actually homeless, living out on the streets. But Lisandro had seen Luis and offered to let him come live in this shack on his property, which was out in the middle of nowhere. And Luis, who's got no other options, is like, awesome, yes, I'd love to do that. And so he moves out into the shack, and pretty quickly after moving in, Luis and Lisandro, they formed a more romantic relationship, and Luis was so happy. He felt like Lisandro was the one person who really understood him and truly supported his art. But then, about 2 months ago, Lisandro had just gone missing. The police were looking into it, but so far, Luis had not gotten any updates. And so Luis was handling this huge gap in his life now, the only way he knew how to, which was with his art. And so this latest project he had just finished was sort of like a tribute to his missing boyfriend. But as Luis put his brush down and stood up to admire his work, he suddenly heard voices from outside. Now, this was highly unusual because this property really was very remote. I mean, the only time Luis or Lisandro would see people here was if they invited them, and Luis had not invited anyone. But before Luis could even react to, these strangers on his property, those people outside began pounding on Luis's front door.
What the fuck?
And so Luis, he opened up the door, and standing there were all these police officers. And Luis's first reaction was, oh, they must be here to give me some updates about Lisandro's disappearance.
I swear if they say they found his body around his painting, whatever the fuck he paints at, I am going to lash the fuck out.
But these police officers, they didn't give an update. Instead, they just pushed past Luis into the art studio and began scooping up all his paints and paintbrushes. And then at some point, one of the officers actually looked down and saw the final project that Luis had been working on, his tribute to his missing boyfriend. And when the officer saw that painting, he turned around, ran outside, and vomited. Here is a picture of that tribute. Now, at first glance, this piece of art is totally unremarkable. You know, it appears to be some
I
sort of
do
stained
love
glass
good painting,
with
though.
green
Why he throw up,
leaves and
though?
some blue and red flowers. But when you consider the types of supplies that Luis used to make this particular piece of art, you'll realize how horrifying this image actually is, and it's what caused that officer to vomit. It would turn out Luis was not just a painter. He was also a serial killer.
What
And
the
what he would
fuck?
do is after he killed his victims, he would use their blood, their ashes, and their other body parts to paint all of his paintings.
Oh,
Now, at
hell
first,
no.
Luis and
But hold
Lisandro
on, go back
weren't
to that
killed
picture,
his
gang.
painter. He was
That nigga look like Charles Manson.
also a
What
serial
the
killer.
fuck? Oh yeah, he did it. He did it for sure. Just look at this nigga. Oh my gosh, bro. R.I.P. to that.
and what
nigga.
he would do other body
Real shit.
parts to paint all of his paintings. Now, at first,
That is
Luis and
disgusting.
Lisandro were actually a happy couple. However, at some point in February of 2018, they got into some kind of fight, and Luis killed Lisandro and quickly began using his body parts to create this tribute to his boyfriend.
Ew.
If you look again at the tribute painting, all the red that is used is Lisandro's blood, and all the black that's used is Lisandro's ashes. All told, police would find the remains of at least 6 people on that property.
6?
They also found evidence that Luis was not just using their body parts to make art, he was also cannibalizing his victims.
Nigga, are we serious, gang? Like everybody want to be Jeffrey Dahmer, huh? Like everybody want to be Jeffrey Dahmer. What the fuck you mean he was cannibalizing them? Oh my gosh, bro. Like we got some weird ass niggas in this world, bro. This shit is crazy. Like what's even crazier about this? Somebody's probably doing this shit right now and we would not know. Like, bro.
Not just using their body parts to make art, he was also cannibalizing his victims. Luis was arrested and made a full confession. As far as we know, he is currently incarcerated in Venezuela.
Yeah, he ain't never getting out. Don't let that nigga out nowhere, bro. Real shit. Keep
In
him
case you
locked
haven't
up.
heard yet, our newest graphic novel,
think that's it, bro.
Mr. Ballin Presents, We're
Oh
Nightmares.
my gosh, but that last one was crazy. What the fuck happened to that nigga? The fuck? Nigga get his neck sucked on or some shit? But hey man, shit, y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments below, you know what I'm saying? Y'all let me know what other videos I'm to react to. Without further ado, now.
I'ma make them feel me, make them people when they show me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen, I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.